Richard had a driving ambition to be good. No, that's not. To be the best. And that's how he characterized it.
If I had to kind of describe Mr. Civerolo in 3 words or less, it would be hard to do because I tend to be kind of wordy, but I think service above self is the 3 words I'd choose.
I would best describe Richard as determined and with fire in his belly.
Over the course of the years that I was associated and a partner with him in practice, he always seemed to be ready to do what needed to be done. He just put his work first, and not in a derogatory way, but in a good way. It required excellence of himself and others around him, and seemed to always be enthusiastic about the type of work that we did.
He had funny stories about being an Italian and growing up in New Mexico. And he always would tell me, if you see an Italian and his last name is O, he's okay. But you've got to watch out. I wondered what Gino Matuzzi thought of that.
A very amazing guy, and that he seemed to always prevail in some respect. If he didn't win, it was close.
If you read Richard's resume, it goes on for paragraphs. And that for Richard, it is not enough just to come to the office and be a lawyer. You must be a lawyer for the Elks Club. You must be a lawyer for the Cancer Society. You must be a lawyer for the American Board of Trial Advocates. You must be a lawyer for the medical legal profession. That is, Richard took his skill and did it in every area of his life. And I think he did it because he's Richard Civerolo.
Richard and I came into contact because I had gotten to know somebody who was practicing in a loose association with him, and that was Pete Domenici. He had a lasting impact on me on the bench in that I learned much of my trial skills from him. I learned how trials should be conducted and what kind of methods are best used in getting the facts out for a determination of what's right and what's wrong.
I was very impressed with the way that he carried himself and how he performed as a lawyer. One of the things that I kind of remember is going to a hearing with him. And I think it might have been one of the first hearings I'd had a chance to go to in that capacity. And I remember that during the course of the hearing, there was quite a heated but very professional argument presented by he and the other attorney. And I was just enthralled with it. At the end of the hearing, though, after each side had kind of really laid out what was wrong with the other side and what was right with their side, the 2 lawyers left, and I recall Richard turning to the other attorney and saying, well, let's have some coffee. And the tone completely changed from being totally professional in court to being very cordial. And it was interesting. There was no discussion of the case, but a nice cordial conversation over a short cup of coffee afterwards. And I always thought that really was an example of professionalism that stuck with me.
When I first met him, I knew that this is a person who would not take second. He always wanted to be the very best. And that was the kind of training that he gave to me. In those days, we would match up with an attorney. And I was first matched up with Richard. And at that time, I didn't have an office. I was in the library. And I was in the library with my other associate, Bill Graylow. And we sat there, and Richard came in, and he had 2 files. And I thought, this is going to be my first file. This is going to be pretty exciting. So he gave me a file. I remember the file's name. It was a guy named Whitney. And he gave Bill a file, and I looked at it, and it said workers' compensation. I had no idea what that was. You don't learn workers' comp in law school. I had no idea. So Richard looked at me, and I said, this is your file. I said, well, where do I get the information? He looked around the library and said, it's in these books. And then he walked out, and I turned to Bill, and Bill stood up and walked out, and Bill said, Bill, where are you going? He said, well, I'm going to go look for a book. And that's how my first day of training.
Some people called him the man with the evil eye. He was commanding a unit of the Red Ball Express under General Patton, and a explosion concussion caused a cataract in one of his eyes, and it resulted in a white spot in the center of that eye. He had it removed many years after I started practicing with him. But during those years before, that was very disarming to witnesses that he was cross-examining. I saw him once change a witness from positive to negative on the same issue. He had skills in cross-examination that were extraordinary. And I think the eye helped him, but he was good with it even after he had his eye fixed.
Over the years, sometimes in Richard's office, and this is fairly recent and way back, be visiting, and Richard would get it in his mind to take a few minutes to dictate a letter or an evaluation. And those were tremendous learning experiences. The way that he would choose the words, the way that he would structure the sentences, just to hear that, I'd go back to my office and think, wow, that was just tremendous. And again, take notes and try to put those into my own thoughts as how I might handle a similar situation.
Richard thought the successful management of a business, and you need to know that he had a view that the successful management, you had to control the pennies. And if you don't understand that, then you really don't understand Richard. One day, yellow legal tablets. All lawyers have yellow legal tablets. You all have to have them. I don't know why yellow, but we did. They went from 75 cents to 85 cents a piece. I remember that. And he was flabbergasted, 10 cents. So he took all the yellow tablets out of the supply cabinet, every one of them, took them to his office and locked them in the drawer, down there, just locked them in the drawer. That way he would control who was going to get these expensive yellow tablets. Well, one day our partner, Leroy Hansen, had to go to court, went to the supply cabinet, yellow tablets. I could hear him wandering around the office. Where's the yellow tablets? Where's it going? And what's the yellow tablets? And finally, one secretary fessed up and said, Richard has them. I was the next door office, and I heard Leroy walk in. And Richard said, well, Leroy, these are 85 cents a piece. Leroy looked at him and said, oh, no, Richard. That's not 85 cents a piece. That tablet cost $185 because it took me 2 hours to find it.
Richard's interests in life were the practice of law and civic matters such as the American Cancer Society and Defense Lawyers Organization and things like that. He was doing that on weekends and nights when the rest of us were enjoying our families. He has had such a long period of his career in which he was continually recognized as a leader. He was one of the most significant leaders in the Bar Association and civic organizations in the Albuquerque area that I know of.
We have a very big conference room with a conference table, and that's Richard's table. It was so difficult to get into our new office that we sawed it in half and drug it up the elevator shaft piece by piece so we could get it in the conference room and piece it together so Richard could sit at the top and have everybody around, and that was going to be his family. I knew that as a member of the family, he would protect. He would make certain that as a family, we faced the world as a unit, and that's what he did.
Richard deserves this award for distinguished achievement just because of the way that he's lived his life and the things that he's done and the position that he's taken on so many things. When you come to the law school, he was in the first graduating class, and he's always had an interest in the school. The firm has hired people from the school. The firm has chosen law clerks from the school. Richard has made contributions to the school monetarily, and always seems to have a keen interest in the school.
He would gauge you, or as I used to say, the member of his legal family, on what you did outside the office. And so if you want a lawyer who will give back to the community, read Richard's resume. He gave it back in spades.
I don't think Richard will ever retire. Why should he? I mean, his mind is sharp. He loves what he does and what he did. I don't think he'll ever retire.
At the time when I started thinking of retirement, I went into his office and I thought I was being magnanimous and said, Richard, partners want to know, would you like to retire? We could set up some kind of an annuity for you, get you the office. And he looked sternly at me. And there was a long pause, and I realized I had made a mistake. And he turned to me and said, Larry, are you trying to kill me? I said, well, thank you, Mr. Civerolo. I'd never mention it again.